gentlemen, we have our jury. So thank you to the remainder of the panel. If you'll just follow the direction of the court officers.
And if the jurors could please stand so they can be sworn as jurors, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that you shall well and truly try the issue between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the evidence, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated.
All right, thank you. I'm just waiting till everyone gets their coat off.
I thought you needed to read for something.
No? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, before we start the trial of the case, I'm just going to make some preliminary remarks to introduce you to the trial and with some of the general legal principles that will control your deliberations. The remarks that I'm about to make are not a substitute for the more detailed instructions on the law, which I will give you at the end of the case before you start your deliberations. And I just also want to let you know about our schedule. Our schedule here in court is from 9 o'clock until 4:30. We break for lunch from 1 to 2, and we'll probably take a break. I wouldn't necessarily take a break now before 1 unless somebody needed it. So if you do need a break or something, or you need anything, just raise your hand. I'll send the court officer over to you to see if we can address your concerns, all right? But other than that, we'll go up till 1 o'clock, break for lunch from 1 to 2, come back from 2 to 4:30, and we will have a 15-minute or so break in the afternoon as well. So as you know, this is the trial of a criminal case. It is the defendant, DM Pham, is charged in a complaint with larceny over $250. And the complaint is a piece of paper. So you should clearly understand that that piece of paper that is called the complaint is not in and of itself any evidence of guilt. It is merely a formal manner of charging a person with a crime in order to bring him or her to trial. So you should not draw any inference of guilt from the complaint or from the fact that the defendant has been formally charged with a crime. Now, in any case, the defendant is presumed to be innocent unless she is proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The law requires the prosecutor, whom we refer to in court terminology as the Commonwealth, the law requires the Commonwealth to prove that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The law does not require that the defendant prove her innocence or produce any evidence. So at the end of the trial, you must find the defendant not guilty unless the Commonwealth has proved to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant has committed the offense with which he is charged. So the defendant is charged with the crime of larceny over $250, and in the particular circumstances of this case, the Commonwealth has to prove the following elements that make up that crime. And the Commonwealth must prove each element beyond a reasonable doubt. So those elements are as follows. First, that the defendant, while in a position of trust or confidence, was entrusted with possession of personal property belonging to another person or entity. Second, the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant took that property or hid it or converted it to her own use without the consent of the owner of the property. And third, the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did so with the intent to deprive the owner of the property permanently. So the trial is going to proceed in the following order. First, the attorneys for the Commonwealth and the defendant will have an opportunity to present opening statements to you. After the Assistant District Attorney makes his opening statement for the prosecution, the defense attorney may choose to make an opening statement right away or may postpone making his opening statement until later in the case, or may decide not to make an opening statement at all since the burden of proof is on the Commonwealth. The opening statements of the attorneys are not evidence. They are somewhat like roadmaps from them to explain to you what they expect the evidence will be. So we have opening statements to assist you to understand what the evidence is expected to be from the parties' viewpoints. Next, the prosecution will introduce evidence in support of the charge in the complaint. After that, the defendant may introduce evidence in her behalf if she wishes to do so, but she is not obliged to do so. Again, remember that the burden of proof is always on the Commonwealth to prove that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The law does not require any defendant to prove his or her innocence or to produce any evidence at all. After all of the evidence is presented, each side will have an opportunity to make closing arguments to you about what conclusions they suggest that you draw from all of the evidence. The closing arguments, like the opening statements, are not evidence in and of themselves. They are designed to assist you to understand the evidence and what each party suggests that evidence means. And finally, after all of the evidence and the attorney's closing arguments, I will be instructing you on the principles of law which you are to apply in your deliberations when you retire to consider your verdict. And your verdict must be unanimous. Let me just speak briefly about your role as the jury and mine as the judge in this case. My responsibility is to see that the case is tried in a way that is orderly, fair, and efficient. It is also my function to decide any questions of law that come up during the course of the trial and to instruct you about the law that applies to the case. It is your duty to accept the law as I state it to you. Your function as the jury is to determine the facts of the case. You are the sole and exclusive judges of the facts. You alone determine what evidence to believe, how important any evidence is that you do believe, and what conclusions to draw from all of the believable evidence. You will have to consider and weigh the testimony of all of the witnesses who appear before you, and you alone will determine whether or not to believe any witness and the extent to which you believe any witness. It is part of your responsibility to resolve any conflicts in the testimony that may arise during the course of the trial and to determine where the truth lies. Ultimately, you must determine whether or not the Commonwealth has proved the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, during the course of the trial, I may be speaking with the attorneys and ruling on any objections or motions, and I will be instructing you on the law at the end of the case. When I do those things, please do not take any of my words or my expressions as any indication of my own opinion as to the defendant's guilt or innocence. If you come to believe during the course of the trial that I have any opinion as to any disputed fact in this case, please disregard it. That is solely your area of responsibility. You have to decide the case solely on the evidence presented in this courtroom. That includes the sworn testimony of any witnesses, any exhibits that I admit in evidence, any facts which I tell you have been agreed to by both parties, and any facts which I indicate that you may take to be a matter of common knowledge. Questions that are put to the witnesses, no matter how artfully they're phrased, are not evidence. The evidence is the answers that you receive from the witnesses who are testifying under oath. If one of the attorneys refers to some portion of the evidence and that does not coincide with your own recollection, it is your own recollection that you are to follow. Now, during the trial, the attorneys may object to questions or statements that may not be admissible under our rules of evidence. That is their function and their responsibility, and you should not look negatively on any attorney who makes those objections. If I agree with an objection, the term that I will use is sustained. I will then not permit the witness to answer that question. You are to disregard the question, and you're not to speculate about what the answer might have been. In the same way, you are to disregard any evidence that I tell you is stricken from the record. If I reject an objection, the term that I will use is overruled. I will then permit the witness to answer that question, but you should not give that answer any more weight than you would have if no objection had been made. If it becomes necessary during this trial to communicate with me, you may send me a signed note. That would generally be done by the foreperson who will be appointed before you retire to consider your verdict. Obviously, during this case, you may not communicate at all with either of the attorneys, the defendant, or any of the witnesses. And I say that particularly because in this courthouse, almost everybody uses the same elevators, goes out and in the same door, so it's not unlikely that you may run into any of the individuals involved in this case out in the hallway or on the front steps or whatever. So obviously you can't say anything to them, but I'd also ask that you kind of stay away from them, you know, because they can't say anything to you either, but they may be talking about the case amongst themselves, and you can't get any information that way, okay? I don't want you to overhear something that you shouldn't, because you have to get all of your information about this case in the courtroom. Until the case is submitted to you with my final instructions, you must not discuss it with anybody, even with each other, okay? Because discussion can lead to some conclusions being drawn and positions being taken prematurely. And I can tell you from experience that fairness requires that you wait, you keep an open mind until all of the evidence is in and you hear the instructions on the law, and then you start to deliberate. And one further point about receiving all your information about the case in the courtroom is that you can't conduct any investigation on your own or engage in any research on the law that might apply. You can't use any outside electronic devices, cell phones, bringing up the internet, bringing up news stories or anything like that to get any information about this case or anything that is particular to this case, okay? You have to restrict yourselves to solely what you are exposed to in this courtroom in the presence of all of the other jurors, okay? You have been chosen precisely because you are impartial, and that's why we go through the impanelment process that we do. So as soon as you take on the role of an investigator or an advocate, or a lawyer, you become an advocate, and then you lose your ability to be impartial. After the case is submitted to you, you may discuss it only in the jury room with all of your fellow jurors present. And it is important that you keep an open mind and not decide any issue in the case until the entire case has been submitted to you. So finally, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you will try this case according to the oath which you just took, in which you promised that you would well and truly try the issue between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the evidence. If you follow that oath and you try the issues without any fear or prejudice or bias or sympathy, then I am confident that you will arrive at a true and a just verdict. Right? Thank you for your attention to those preliminary remarks. Is Commonwealth Attorney Garrett, are you ready to make your opening?
I am, Your Honor.
Okay. Yes. Hang on 1 minute. I'm just going to have the clerk read the complaint.
Members of the jury, hearken to the complaint in docket number 1423 CR 9102, where allegedly in Springfield, defendant is charged with larceny over 250, where allegedly on September 13th, 2014, did steal the property of XCM Insurance, such property having a value of more than $250 in violation of General Laws Chapter 266, Section 30. To this complaint, members of the jury, the defendant has pleaded not guilty and for trial thereof has put herself upon this country. Which country you are. You are now sworn to try the issue. If she's guilty, you will say so. If she's not guilty, you will say so and no more, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, Attorney Garrity.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Before I begin my opening statement, which will be brief, I just wanted to thank you again for your service, for taking time out of your busy schedules today to be here. It is an important function that you are serving today. Now, today you're going to hear a story about a local small business here in Springfield, an insurance agency called Axiom Insurance. And briefly, what this insurance company does is they're a brokerage. So they serve their clients who come into the brokerage to pay their premiums, and at that point, the Axiom Insurance Agency sends the payments to the bigger insurance companies like a Progressive or a Geico or a Arbella. So that's the basic function business model of this company. Now, today you're going to hear that the defendant, seated over there, DM found, was an employee of Axiom Insurance back in September of 2014. You'll hear that she was a trusted employee. She was tasked with handling money, with counting money, with placing money in the safe at the insurance agency, for making deposits of that money into the company's bank account. She was trusted, and you'll hear those facts. Now, on the day of September 12, 2014, it was a Friday. You'll hear that the defendant was working that day. In the normal course of her business, was collecting the money, counting the money, and was tasked with placing that money into the safe. Now, the next day, the insurance company was open as well. You'll hear testimony from another individual, Michael Gignac. He'll tell you that he came in, opened the insurance agency, opened the safe, and saw that the money was there, the Friday money, sitting in the safe in a bag. He'll testify that he went about his business that day, again, similarly collecting the money, collecting the premium payments from his customers, and at the end of the day, he counted the money, reconciled it, and placed it in the safe. He'll testify that there was 2 bags, one for Friday and one for Saturday, in that safe on Saturday afternoon when he left and locked up. The business was closed until Monday morning. You'll hear testimony that on Monday, the 15th of September of 2014, the defendant again was scheduled to work, and she did in fact work. In fact, you'll hear testimony that she made a deposit in the bank. 1 deposit. And that's important, because there was 2 bags in the safe. Only 1 was deposited. Further, you'll hear that the next day, on Tuesday, is the first time that the business found out about this missing bag of money. When confronted by the owner of the insurance agency, you'll hear that the defendant at that time handed in a letter of resignation. You'll hear a number of facts today, and I'd ask you to take those facts, use your common sense to determine what really happened here. Commonwealth contends that it was the defendant. Now, thank you again for your time. I'd ask you to use your life experiences and determine the facts here. And at the end of that determination, Commonwealth is asking you to find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Attorney Linsky?
If I may. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and thank you for your service today. Now, when you got in your car and you came here to Springfield to go to the courthouse, you probably didn't expect that you were going to actually end up on the jury. As a matter of fact, you were probably hoping, or maybe some of you were hoping, you weren't going to end up on the jury. So I guess you're But the reality is that most of the time, or almost all the time, if you talk to people who've actually served on a jury, even though that they didn't want to when they got in their car and they came to the courthouse, it ended up being a very rewarding experience. So on behalf of everybody involved in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I thank you for your service. Now, you've already heard from Her Honor, and she's told you a little bit about what your job is. But let me just try to explain a couple of things. In case you missed my name, by the way, during the introductions, my name is David Linsky, and I represent the unfound, who is obviously the defendant in this case, the accused. And you've already heard from Her Honor, who will instruct you as the law and preside over the trial. You've heard from Madam Clerk, who does a very important function here. You've met the court officer as well, and he has a job to do with to assist the orderly processing of this case. And you just heard from the Assistant District Attorney, Mr. Garrity, who represents the interests of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He's the prosecutor in this case. And as I said, I represent the defendant. But it is you, ladies and gentlemen, who have the most important job. For it is you who will decide what the facts are and what the facts are not, what the truth is and what the truth is not. And it is ultimately you who will decide whether or not the defendant is guilty or innocent in this case. Now, thankfully, you bring in your common experience and your common sense and your life experience in trying to make that decision about this. Now, Her Honor, when she was giving you the preliminary instructions, and it's her instructions that control, she talked to you about the elements of this case, about what constitutes larceny or embezzlement. But she also mentioned to you the most important instruction, and that is that each of the elements have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And that the defendant is presumed to be innocent until such time, and only such time, as the Commonwealth proves each of those elements beyond a reasonable doubt. That's an extremely important constitutional protection that each one of us have here. Very important. And I thank you for taking the oath, and I thank you for sitting as jurors in this case. Now, you've heard from Mr. Garrity about how Ms. Fond worked at Axiom Insurance. That's not disputed. But he didn't tell you a bunch of things about what was really going on at Axiom Insurance and how this case got to be brought today. He didn't tell you that the way that you opened the safe that's in question at Axiom Insurance was incredibly sloppy. Let me tell you what the evidence is going to show here. The evidence is going to show that all of the employees had a key that opened the door to the building that Axiom Insurance was at that time. But that same key that everybody had, also opened the safe inside Axiom Insurance. And the reality is, what the evidence is going to show, is there are 6 or 7 or maybe even more people who had a key to the door and had a key to the safe. And there was no combination on the safe. And in addition to that, get this, they had what they call a floater key that they kept in the desk. A floater key. That anybody who was ever in that office had access to, who could go in and open up the safe. It was incredibly sloppy the way they ran this business. But it goes even more than that. See, I expect the Commonwealth is going to call as witnesses 3 or 4 people who were employees of the owner of Axiom Insurance around that same time. And you know what? Each one of those people had a key to the safe and a key to the door. And each one of those people who's going to take the stand are going to say that they had the same access, the same opportunity to that money that was supposedly missing as the defendant was. This was so sloppy. It's a crazy situation. And they'll tell you effectively that the reason, and the only reason, that they because that's not who she is. But she's going to tell you that the owner of the insurance company was mad at her. He was mad at her because he had invested time and effort in training her and sending her to a course. And that as a way to get back at her for quitting after he invested time and money in her, he got her charged in this case. It's a terrible situation. It's a terrible situation. The other thing that you're going to hear is, and she's going to tell you this, and she has the emails to prove it, that she had been looking for a job for quite some time, and that she had gotten a job offer a few days earlier that she was deciding whether or not to take. And then when the owner of the company, confronted her and was asking her if she took it, she said, "I'm not taking this anymore. I'm getting out of here." Because she'll tell you she didn't enjoy working there. Other employees, I expect during this, are going to tell you that they didn't enjoy working there because it was a bad place to work. And she wasn't being valued. She wasn't being treated fairly. And then this was the final straw, and that's why she quit. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a tragedy that we are here today. This is a tragedy that we are here. Because one guy who was mad at this woman here for quitting after he'd invested time and money in a course in her, decided to point the finger at her. And it really isn't fair. You'll also hear something about the bookkeeping at this place. They probably can't even tell you with any certainty, number one, how much money was taken in, what happened with it, whether or not the money in some cases even existed, because there were no accounting controls. There were no accounting controls whatsoever in the way that they had there. And that nobody really knows what happened to the money. Nobody really knows how much of that money ever really existed. It was incredibly sloppy. It was a sloppy operation. There was no security whatsoever. There were 6 or 7 keys. Anybody could have taken the money. But the one thing that this trial is going to show is that whoever took that money wasn't the defendant in this case. So I thank you for your consideration. I ask you for an open mind, keep an open mind in this case, and at the end of this, I'll come before you and ask you to return the right verdict, the correct verdict, the just verdict, a verdict of not guilty.
Thank you. Okay, Attorney Garrity, you want to call your first witness, please?
Yes, the Commonwealth will call Lance Letourneau.
You swear affirm the testimony you'll give the court in the cause now in hearing will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Keep your voice up, the microphone records, but it doesn't.
Morning, Mr. Letourneau.
Morning.
You please state your full name, spelling your last name for the court.
Lance Letourneau, Letourneau.
And are you currently employed?
Yes.
And what is your employment?
I'm the president of operations for an insurance agency. Does automobile and homeowners insurance predominantly.
What's the name of that insurance agency?
Axiom Insurance Agency.
And where is that insurance agency located?
We have an office on the intersection of Dickinson Street and Sumner Ave, and one on Boston Road, and a couple other in some of the towns outlying Springfield.
So, how many?
4.
4 branches.
Yes.
And you were the president and the director of operations. Now, specifically focusing on the location on the Dickinson Street in the city of Springfield, I believe it's 388 Dickinson Street.
Yes.
Could you give me an overview of how your business process works? Your business process worked in September of 2014.
Okay, in September of 2014, it's an insurance agency. It does automobile and homeowners insurance predominantly, and we have a lot of foot traffic of people that come in and make payments on their insurance policies, monthly, because maybe they forgot to send a check or whatnot, or they're doing a new business and they're giving us a down pay to get a new policy. And so during the course of the day, many people come into the office and make their payments. And the process that we have in
Now,
place,
just stop you really quick. Those payments, are they made with cash?
cash. Yes, cash. We receive a lot of cash. The payments that we receive for the insureds during the course of the day to make sure that the funds get to the insurance carriers and people's policies don't bounce, and to make sure that we, at the end of the day, have the same amount of cash that we should have for the payments that we receive from people. We have a system where the insured will come in, if they're making a payment, they give us the cash, and we take that cash and we create a money order for it to go to the insurance carrier. That way, the insured gets a copy of the money order stub. They know that their payment is going to Hanover, Plymouth Rock, or whoever they have to pay their insurance to. And then we have a run-on tally of how many money orders that particular person had written during the day.
When you say particular person, what do you mean?
Each person during the course of the day has their own drawer and is.
You say person, do you mean employee?
Employee, yes. Each employee takes their own amount of payments and it's tracked to them. So at the end of the day, a report is run that says that, person one took in 10 payments and we received $1,000 in payments. So when they come to cash out at the end of the day, they should have $1,000.
And so let's stop there. There are a number of employees that
Yes.
work there.
Yep.
And what is the function of the employees that initially greet the customers?
There's people that are service-oriented that are up at the front counter that physically take the cash in from the person and figure out what company they have to send the payment to, or try to figure out what type of transaction it is, whether they're getting a new car on the road. But they receive the cash, and there may be 2 or 3 or 4 people during the course of the day that are receiving the cash. And each one of them has their own drawer and their own cash. It's not a pool of cash, so that way each person, we can tell if they're over or under. That way it isn't, the problem isn't everyone's problem. Someone is light or someone's over. Then if you're over, you can figure out that maybe someone's payment didn't get sent somewhere and we can fix it. And if you're under, we got to figure out why.
Now, once the individual employees at the front collect the money, what do they do with the money next?
They each have their own drawer and they keep track of it themselves. It's not pooled. So each person by the end of the day should have the corresponding amount to the amount of money orders or prepaid cards they would have to load during the day. And these reports validate per person how much cash they should take.
And where does that cash go next after it's been in those?
At the end of the day, the employee will count how much cash they have. When we run the reports, those 2 numbers should jive. And then at the end of the day, the money would get counted out by the office manager, who would see the money as well to validate that person's, in theory, $1,000 was $1,000. So if we had 4 employees, she would count the 4 amounts of cash, and that would get put into an envelope, bank bag, and then put into a safe.
Now, the office manager's function is to count the cash?
At the end of the day, to validate that the cash matches what the employees have and what they were supposed to have written.
Now, does the accident insurance agent, does the business keep records of what came in and what came out each day?
Yes. Detailed records.
And those are kept in the normal course of the business that you do?
Every day, yes, every day. Because if someone had given us cash for a payment and it didn't make it to the carrier, their policy could go in cancellation. It could be a significant problem for them. So if they contacted us, we could go back through our records and see exactly what money order it was, and then either check with MoneyGram to see if that money order has been in fact cashed, or if it's not, then we can reissue the money order if it's not cashed, and then get the money to the carrier. It backstops the problems of people giving an entity money and the money doesn't get where it's supposed to go. It's not my money, it's the insured's money. And this methodology makes sure the money goes to where it's supposed to go. And I can track it.
Now, and this system of reporting was in place back on September 12th, 2014?
Yes.
May I approach?
Yes.
series of documents.
Okay.
Can you tell me what those are?
This is the end-of-day report for the cash received for this particular day.
What day was that?
This date on this report is going to be 9/12/2014.
And does that report indicate how much money was taken in by by the accident insurance agency?
Yes,
And how much money was that?
$7,016.
And that's $7,016. Where would that money be at the end of the day?
At the end of the day.
Objection. If he knows.
Oh, yes, if he knows. Okay, that's overruled, if he knows.
The usual course of business at the end of the day, once the money is cashed out, it's put within an envelope and then put into a safe.
And is the envelope marked?
Yes.
And how is it marked?
It usually has the amount of money in the envelope and who put it in and the date on it.
Now, going back, DMFAM, was she an employee for the accident insurance company?
Yes.
And was she employed back in the time of September, specifically September 12th,
Yes.
2014? And what was her role in your company?
She was the manager of that office at 388 Dickinson Street.
And you previously testified that the manager of the office counts the money at the end of the day and places the money into the safe?
Yes.
And that was her role at the
Yes, that
company?
was, of the roles, yes, that's one of them.
Now, do you see that individual in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you identify her by a piece of clothing she may be wearing?
Yes, she's got the glasses sitting there.
No objection.
All right,
Thank you, Your Honor. Just let the record reflect that the witness did identify the defendant.
yes, it will.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about the office and the entry and exit to the office. How do you get in to the office at 388 Dickinson Street?
There's two doors to the office. There's what you call the front door where the customers would come through. And then there's, it's got a counter and the customers can only go up to a certain point in the office. They just can't roam around the office. So we do the transactions at the counter. And then on the side of the building is another door that has entry to the building. And both of these doors are keyed with very special Safeco keys, very akin to what a bank would use, and they're laser cut. So you can't copy the keys unless you go exactly to the same company that originated the key.
And now this keyed system that was in place at the office in
Yes.
September of 2014.
Yes.
Now, during business hours, were both of those doors left unlocked?
In the front and the side, yes, so the staff can get in and out for lunch, and in the front for the customers to come in, yes.
And after business hours, were they locked?
Yes.
And who was tasked with unlocking and locking the doors every day? if you know?
The manager to come in and out.
Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the safe. There was a safe in this office?
Yes.
And where was it located in the office?
In the far back of the office through several doors in a small, closet.
Now, how did you get in and out of the safe?
The same type of key that the side doors have is a laser cut key to get in and out of the safe.
And did you have a key to the safe?
Yes,
Do you know, if you know, were there any other keys to that safe?
there were 5.
And did the defendant, Ms. DMFAM, have one of those keys?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to, at this point, Your Honor, I would move to admit the document into evidence. It's the business records from September 12, 2014.
Per Your Honor's judgment.
Yeah, I think a little more foundation for them. I'm not sure what the rest of them are, other than I think he read off the top one. I don't know what the rest of it is, or when they were made, or what the dates are.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Letourneau, that document in front of you, the first document, what is that?
This is, it identifies by type of transaction how much cash was received for that day on the cover page. And then when you go from the cover page, it goes to the report that comes off of the MoneyGram machine that tells you how much cash was run through the money orders. So that should validate the amount of cash that was received by the employees. Following that, it's the type of transactions that were done for the insureds that came through. And then beyond that, you get the transactions. And then, as I stated before, back here, the copies of each money order, that way there's proof that a person came and gave us the money. They came and say, hey, I came and paid you for my policy's getting canceled. What day do you think you came in? I can go and look, and I know exactly the number, and I can call MoneyGram and say, hey, has this money order been cashed? And if they say yes, I can say, has it been cashed or when? And if it has, I can call the carrier and say, it looks like you have it. Can you see if it's been applied to a different person? If it hasn't been cashed, then I'll say it hasn't been cashed, and I can stop this money order, and then I will cut not I myself, but then I will cut a new money order to replace one that's missing and send it on to the insurance carrier. It protects my clients, to make sure that their money goes where it's supposed to go. They have a copy, I have a copy. The carriers, they're big multi-million-dollar companies, they have lots of people touch things. I have a copy. I know exactly what number it was, the date, the amount, everything. So there's a copy of every basically transaction someone does. So
moving back to that front page, what does I see there's a box that says Pay-O-Matic, and there's a number underneath that says 1278.
That's, some companies want their cash today, that day, and they limit our ability to say, hey, we've received cash, we have guaranteed funds in the form of a money order to send on to you. They say, no, we want it now. So we would preload a prepaid card, and we put the money on the prepaid card, and we'd call the carrier and have them pull it right off the prepaid card. That way you can get there that day. A lot of the insureds, people that might come through our office that don't have access to credit cards or bank accounts, maybe for whatever reason, maybe they don't have it on them, maybe they just don't have access, so they don't have the ability to call the insurance company and say, here's my credit card number, I don't want to get canceled, or here's my checking account number, I don't want to get canceled, and just pull it from my account. So for us to help them, this is the system that we put in place to make sure their money can get where it's got to go in a timely fashion.
And so that 1278, that represents cash that was
Loaded on prepaid cards, yep.
Okay.
And there's a report for that in here as well.
And there's another box right next to it that says MoneyGram, and
Yes.
underneath it, what's the number underneath it?
That's on $5,663.
And what does that number mean to you?
That number is the number of the money orders that we actually issued and mailed off to the various insurance companies. We have about 7 different auto companies we would send payments to, and 3 or 4 homeowners companies we would send payments to as well. So these are the records of the payment that we sent. And the system works really well, because if the carrier says they didn't receive it in time, we have a record that we have it and we issued it. And since we're the insurance agent, if I get it today, it's today. Some carriers argue that, but I got it and I have a copy of it.
Now, when are those MoneyGram orders, once you receive the cash, when are those orders mailed out?
Usually that night or the next morning, depending on the time urgency of when they have to get in the mail.
And that money that you collect, that goes into the safe, you testified?
Yes.
And where does the money from that's part of the money order come from? I guess I'll rephrase the question. You testified that the cash comes in, once the cash comes in, it gets put in the safe, and that same day you create a money order and send it out?
Yes.
Where does the cash behind the money order come from?
Our customers, the insureds, they physically visit the office and they will want to make a payment on their insurance policy so it doesn't cancel, or their payments are in a timely fashion, or they're starting a new policy, they bought a new car and they want to put a car on the road. So they may have to give me, or us, not myself, the entity, $250. To start your policy, you need $250 today, and your payments will be X amount in the future for X amount of payments. So That would be one type of transaction. Another would be, I need to come in and make my payment. I know I have to make my payments by the 15th. Today's the 12th. I've got my cash. I was like, okay, well, take that cash and convert it into a money order. They get a little slip stub with the money order number on it and the amount on it. It's given to them. And then the money order itself we have, and we send it off to the carrier. The insured has a copy of the stub. We have a physical copy of the money order itself. So there's copies everywhere.
Now, this cover sheet that I'm looking at, that we're discussing, that's, who would that be filled out by?
At the end of the day, this would be filled out by the manager.
Okay.
She would aggregate the reports from the MoneyGram and the
What
other
date,
reports.
what date was this particular worksheet that I'm looking at from?
This one, it's the 9/12 work order, or
September 12th?
Yes.
And what year was that?
2014.
And what is the, if you know, the total amount from that front worksheet that was,
$7,016.
what does that number indicate?
That's the amount of cash we received during the day from all the insureds and the cash transactions that came through.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd move to admit simply the top cover page business record into evidence as Commonwealth's Exhibit 1.
Objection.
All right, overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So that'll be exhibit number 1 for the Commonwealth.
Now, Mr. Letourneau, when did you find out that, or strike that, early next week, that Monday, I believe it was the 15th of September?
Mhm.
Did you notice anything strange about the business?
On Monday, no.
And how about on Tuesday the 16th? Did you notice anything different about the way the business is
Yes.
running?
Every,
Objection. Yes or no?
Okay, yes or no?
And what was strange that you noticed?
Objection.
Overruled.
every morning, I wake up, prepare myself to go to work, just like everyone else, and on the way into work, I'll stop and grab a coffee, and by then I have good signal for my mobile devices, and I check the bank account every morning to see if the cash is in there that's supposed to be in there for the day. And I have a pretty good mental picture of how much money should be in there every day, knowing from the reports that I get emailed to me every night before or whatnot, that a deposit should go in for $6,000, $7,000, $5,000, and what comes out from the companies that extract the money. So on that particular morning, I looked in the account, and the account should have had about $12,000 in it, and only had $5,000. And that was really peculiar to me. So I thought maybe one of my companies I had done business with, the MoneyGram or the Paymatic, maybe had hit the account twice. That's all I would think of. So as I finally made it to the office, I started running all the reports, and that's not what had happened.
What did you find after going through the reports, and what did happen?
Objection.
You want to be heard at the side? Okay.